Let's close up with some fan questions, guys. We didn't get to these last week just because of a time constraint. We've got a few minutes here before we get out of here. The first one, and it's from a gentleman who emailed us, and he has been listening to all kinds of former podcasts that both I've been involved with, and other major podcasts that revolve around the Bengals, and that's Eric Oxley, otherwise known as Doc Ox. Great guy. We love hearing from him. Kind of a long question. He writes, what do you guys think about teams being required to release their draft boards after the draft is complete? With the expert prognosticators throughout the land chiming in with their player rankings and stating who our Bengals should take, wouldn't it be fun to see how our War Room and others rank the draft class so we could compare them to the actual selections? If I recall, the Cowboys board was leaked a few years ago, and it created some enjoyable discussions. And then the only downside I could see would be some possible hurt feelings from players if they're not rated as high as some thought on certain draft boards. Scott, I'm going to start with you on this one. You recently wrote something for Cincy Jungle, a little bit similar to what we talked about last week in terms of which draft analysts do you trust the most. And I think you wrote one that went up on the site on Wednesday talking about which draft analysts are actually the most accurate in their guesses with teams. Do you think that this, I mean, it's kind of a creative question. Do you think that teams should be, I don't want to say forced to do it, but do you think that it could be something, draft boards from a particular team could be available just to kind of see, or do you think it's something that should just continue to be kept close to the vest?
As a fan, I'd love to see it. I think the fans, for the same reason fans love Hard Knocks, they would love something like this. Anything behind the scenes after the fact that kind of takes you through the process of, the scouting, kind of like what you see when they are evaluating who they're going to cut on Hard Knocks. So we're, this guy, we're going after that guy. This guy, we're looking to see this or that from him. This guy's not panning out in practice. This guy needs to do this better. Yeah, that'd be awesome. When you're sitting in where the scouts and the GM, if we had a GM, but assuming we did, and the scouts and the coaches all have their meetings and they're talking about the different players they've met and the evaluations and how they're ranking them, and then kind of following them on draft day. I mean, I think many fans would love to see something like that. That being said, I don't know if that's something that would happen. And the reason I say that is a lot of fans or a lot of teams like to keep that information kind of confidential. They don't want other teams knowing what they're thinking as far as strategies, because that's something that goes beyond just that 1 year of who we're cutting. It kind of goes into their core philosophy of what they believe, and then down the road, if they're looking at maybe pushing a player from another guy off the practice squad, it kind of gives you insights. Oh, this team was really looking at this guy. Let's not put him on the practice squad. Let's keep him because we don't want the Browns, whoever to take him from us. I think it'd be very hard for the league to convince teams to do that. And if they did, I'd assume that I could see the Patriots doing it, but I think they would give you a total BS award.
Probably.
And I think other teams would probably follow along. But as a fan, I would love to see it. I just don't know if it's something that they could do, unless it's something that they could do like a Hard Knocks, where it's kind of after the fact, or maybe even like that show with Arizona Cardinals on Netflix, where it was kind of like a year later. So, kind of everything's said and done, and you just you let the team kind of edit out stuff that I think might be a little too confidential as far as some of their in-depth of what they do. So I'd love to see it, and I think there's a way it could be done. And the NFL likes money, so I could see them looking at it as another revenue stream, making a channel doing it. So I love the idea.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. I think fans would eat it up. I think mock draft experts would also love to see that, and probably might even change, how they end up ranking players in the future. I just don't see it happening ever. I think it's part of the secrecy thing. I think a lot of teams have already kind of shied away from Hard Knocks. I mean, some teams just do it, and that's kind of what it is. And I think it's a great documentary, very cool for fans. I just think this is a little too burrowed deep in terms of I don't know if you want to say airing dirty laundry of teams and how they do things. There are a couple of people associated with teams. I think Dave Lapham, in terms of the Bengals, has a very strong pulse as to what the Bengals draft board looks like every year. And for what they do in the first round, I think Lapham's a pretty reliable source. Connor, your thoughts on if draft boards should be released? You dabble in the draft as well. Obviously, interesting thought. Do you think it should happen? Do you think it ever will happen? I don't know.
I mean, it'd be fun, but no, I like it the way it is. The whole league stuff is just annoying to me. And I don't know, it's just the mock draft. I think part of what makes the draft so fun is watching, everyone's mock drafts just go to crap as soon as one pick is made. Blake Bortles goes off the board at 3 and 2 years ago or whatever it was, and everyone starts freaking out because he wasn't there in their mock draft 4.7 or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's like the whole teams want a competitive advantage. It's just not a practical idea. It'd be fun, but it's never going to happen. So I don't know. I don't really even see that much of a. I don't know. It'd be fun, I guess, in theory, but it's not going to happen. And I could also even see it being more fun in the sense that teams, or I just like watching people, these mock drafters who think they know everything, just realize they don't know everything. It makes you appreciate how much teams know and how thorough their evaluation process is, because everyone else just seems to think that they know it all, whereas these teams whose job it is to evaluate players on a professional level don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and obviously, sometimes the mock drafters are more accurate than the teams. The teams rate guys higher and they end up whiffing on them, and the mock drafters are right on other players that they should have taken. But you're right. These guys work for an NFL franchise and are paid well to do so for a specific reason. So, that's how it is. And I don't think there's ever going to be a mandate from the NFL to say, hey, release your draft boards after the thing. Maybe teams would, if they really want to do it, could voluntarily do it. I just don't see teams doing that. I think as a fan, though, I think that would be very cool to see, and especially who they took and the guys that maybe were selected in front of the player they took and how they had them ranked. I think that would be pretty interesting, but I just don't really see it happening unless a team voluntarily does it. Good question from Doc Ox, though. Thanks for emailing us. We had a question in the chat room from Aaron Siegel, and I kind of wanted to avoid this just because we're big on the draft this week, but there is yet more news about Adam Jones. And for those who don't know, there was some off-season workouts that are taking place at Paul Brown Stadium with Bengals players, and Adam Jones was there and volunteered to be interviewed by the media. And I guess it was Joe Daneman from local Fox News Cincinnati who asked him a question about something akin to the idea of does Jones have a message to the fans after this recent incident? An opportunity for Jones to show contrition to the fans, give a brief message, apologize, and say I'm moving on, that sort of thing. And instead, he didn't. I don't want to say he blew up at the reporter, but he told him to leave. He told him, I told you not to ask me that question, and he doesn't apparently want to answer any more questions from that specific reporter the rest of the year, according to a statement he made on video. Aaron kind of asks about that situation. Let me ask, do you believe Adam Jones' confrontation will ensure a suspension if it wasn't already in the cards? And if so, who will start? Scott, the idea of this adding fuel to the fire of a potential suspension, and I mean, your thoughts on his actions on this? Pretty inexplicable, at least from my end.
I'll just give a quick answer. I don't think it will. I all agree that what he did was just totally absurd, uncalled for. That being said, I don't think what he did is going to change if he's suspended or not by the league. And I don't think it's going to change his employment by the team. I think if the team is willing to stick with him through what he had done back in January, I don't think this is going to bother them. And similarly, I think there's nothing with grumbling at a reporter that is suspendable. I think if he does get a suspension from the league, it's probably from the earlier stuff. What I think it will do is turn fans off even more. The fans who want him gone and still see him on the team are even going to be more frustrated with him. And the fans who are maybe on the fence, I think, are now probably a little more on the side of, yeah, we just want to see this guy go. And as much as I like Joe Mixon as a prospect, I think now if you add Joe Mixon and you still have Adam Jones, I think you are just opening yourself up to even more criticism from outside, especially if Adam Jones does another thing between now and the start of the season, and the team still does nothing with Adam Jones. So I think the team kind of dug their heels in that we are sticking with him. I think we still need to see, but I think every time Adam Jones opens his mouth in front of the camera, it's just driving the fans further away. I don't know if it's driving fans away from the team, but it's definitely driving fans away from him.
Yeah.
And doing nothing to help the image of the Bengals outside of Cincinnati.
Right. Connor, your thoughts on the situation?
I think it's an interesting one. I have split opinions because obviously Adam Jones, he's going to be like that. It was definitely not unexpected. It was pretty, anytime he's on camera, he says stupid things. He had the whole, I mean, what's more embarrassing, what he said to Joe Danneman or his tirade where he insinuated that Antonio Brown was faking a concussion? I think the latter was way more embarrassing to Bengals fans. After Antonio Brown suffered that injury, for Adam Jones to basically just, add salt to that wound, and it was really just uncalled for. And then he had, he went off on Terrell Pryor that one time. I don't know if that was him or Dre or a combination of both. But, that's just kind of Adam Jones. And it's a question of whether or not people think journalistic integrity, what the exact definition of that is. Because, you have a guy who tells the guy, hey, don't ask me about this. And people are going to say, well, he wasn't specifically told not to ask about, a potential apology. But then, you hear Jones say, didn't I just tell you not to ask me this? And he's like, yeah, but like Joe Danneman was like, yeah, but, and then he says, whatever else he was going to say. Like, he knew what he was doing. And again, it's a matter of what your opinion is. If you think that's a reporter's job is to ask tough questions, then you'll probably love, Danneman for doing that. If you think a reporter's job is to, journalist has responsibility to do what players ask them to do, in addition to what the official rules are presented by, the team or the league or whatever, then it's a matter of interpretation. Personally, I think that if a guy, I don't like when reporters ask questions that I don't like. It makes a guy, and it's a way irrational example when you're comparing the two. But I think of when the Houston reporter was asking Draymond Green last year, hey, the last time you guys came here, Houston had like a flood or whatever, and now you guys are coming here again. Do you think do you think the Warriors have anything to do with that? And it was just like, what is this guy talking about? The guy got fired for it. But it was just one of those things where there's so many interesting, relevant questions you could ask, and I don't know. It's just Jones has had every opportunity to make an apology. If he wanted to apologize, he didn't need a reporter to ask him. If he wanted to apologize, he could have just done it on Instagram, on Twitter, on the Bengals website. Like, he has every means to do it. So I don't know. I don't buy the whole this is his only opportunity to apologize. It was dumb. And do I think that it has to do I think a suspension could be in the works for this? My answer is I don't know, because the NFL seems to be completely, just they don't understand what they're doing with suspensions. We saw Vontaze Burfict get suspended for what, 3 games, I think, for maybe it was 4 for his hit on Antonio Brown and, quote unquote past history when guys like Aqib Talib make an intentional face masking penalty in the Super Bowl, and then he has a self-inflicted gun wound. Guys like, Johnny Manziel doesn't get offended, or suspended. I know it's like, and then you have Sheldon Richardson, who last year had he led police on a high-speed chase going 143 miles per hour in a car, had a 12-year-old in the back seat, and the car reeked of marijuana, and there was a loaded semi-automatic handgun in the back seat, and he got a 1-game suspension for that. So do I think Adam Jones yelling at a reporter is going to get him, is going to impact his chances of suspension, which, by the way, I don't even know if it happened or not. Do I think that impacts his chances? No. But, the NFL has done crazier things. So I don't know. All in all, I think that, personally, I can see both sides of the story. I think both people are at fault. The reporter could have just not asked him the question. Adam Jones, like I said, has had every chance to apologize if he wants to apologize, but he hasn't. And it has to do with a legal trial, or at least you could make the argument that Adam Jones doesn't say anything because it's, an impending trial or whatever. But then, it's also on Adam Jones. You can't not, get frustrated with the guy for blowing up at anyone anytime he seems to be talking to anyone. So yeah, I guess that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be a little brief. We're running short on time here, but in terms of the last question, if so, who will start? I think the team would give William Jackson III the nod as long as he's healthy. I think they really like him, and I think he's more athletic than Darqueze Dennard, and I think he would be a very athletic combination opposite of Drake Kirkpatrick if Jones were to miss some time. In terms of this specific instance, adding fuel to the fire of a potential suspension, I don't think this has anything to do with it. He didn't, I don't think he swore at Joe Danneman or anything like that. He didn't really yell at him. He just kind of is like, dude, I don't want to answer this. And told him to go away. So if you don't like the instance, I don't think that it adds to the suspension. I think it's the off-field stuff. I think it's the past history that would lead to a suspension, and obviously the verdict in this case with him that would lead to a suspension. And I agree with you, Connor, that obviously the NFL is very fickle when it comes to how they dole out suspensions, and some of them are very fair, some of them are very unfair. There's not really a code or a set of rules or guidelines for teams to for the league to suspend players based on certain instances. So that's kind of the thing. I'm going to go on a mini rant here. I agreed with a lot of what you said, Connor, and there's a lot of rationale with what you said in terms of, he supposedly told him not to ask the question, and he still asked it. I don't get why you don't want to answer that question. I don't understand. For sure.
It's understandable.
I don't understand why, and you alluded to the fact that Pac-Man has had a number of chances. All he's really done in terms of public statements since the incident is really thank the Bengals organization for giving him another chance, and he thanks Mike Brown and all of that. Great. It's not just the team that gets a black eye; it's the fan base, and this is a team that hasn't done the best job of reaching out to its fan base. It's done a better job in recent years, but not still outstanding in terms of fan outreach and whatnot. And this whole thing is an embarrassment, and it's an embarrassment that he still gets to stick around and make millions of dollars again this year to play for this team after not only doing another off-field idiotic incident, but not even really apologizing to the fans. I think if he didn't want to answer the question, all he had to really say was, look, I'm sorry. I messed up. I'm doing things to correct it. It's in the process. I apologize to the fans, and that's all I really have to say about it. And then if he was pressed further, then you could understand maybe, hey, I just answered that. Let's move on. This is a guy who supposedly is in court-mandated anger management and is not showing that it's having a positive effect in terms of this kind of situation. And you know, we can sit here and say, well, for the most part, he's kind of kept his nose relatively clean with the Bengals. Whether it's this incident, he punched a girl at a bar a few years back. There's the thing with Amari Cooper where he slammed his head to the turf a couple of years ago. You mentioned the thing with Antonio Brown. He's just a pot stirrer, whether it's, you know, kind of in fun with some of the things he does on Instagram and all of that, or whether it's intentional or unintentional, just really law breaking. He's just he doesn't get it, and it's a shame. He's got a family now. He's going into his mid-30s. You would think at this point he would just kind of say, "Look, I gotta calm down, and this is stuff I gotta stop doing." And it's not happening. And I get that he maybe didn't want to answer the question. There was a much more polite way to do that, and or he could have given it a short, brief answer and let's move on. I at least from what I've seen, like you said, Connor, I don't think he has publicly apologized to the fans, at least, for embarrassing them with his actions. And maybe he doesn't feel he needs to, but and maybe some fans say, hey, you know, he's a football player, who cares? But you know, it's just something that as a decent human being that has a set of moral code, you kind of would think like, hey, I feel bad about what I did. I screwed up. And he really hasn't done that, at least to the fans. He maybe said he's done it to his teammates, maybe, and definitely to ownership. But very weird situation. I hope that we kind of answered those questions, the series of questions that Aaron asked there with the Jones situation. A lot to still play out with that. As of now, though, it looks as if he will still be with the Bengals in 2017 and probably starting at corner opposite of Dre Kirkpatrick, at least for this year. Mixed feelings about that. But, you know, if that's the case, let's hope he doesn't miss time. Let's hope he plays maybe a little better than he did last year at corner. I mean, he still played okay, but let's hope, you know, he steps up his play, and let's hope that this stuff is behind him. As of now, I don't think he's ever going to change who he is. I just think this is who he is, and we can continue to get offended by it. We can continue to get, you know, annoyed, but I think that's what you get with this guy. And for better or for worse, that's kind of the deal. And for now, he's under contract over the next couple of years with the team. So may have to deal with this kind of stuff for at least 2 more years. We'll see. Thanks for the questions tonight, guys. We ran a little long yet again, but we got to a lot of good stuff, so I'm excited about that.